Trekland HQ, and we are at last live. You have 40 years and 7 Star Trek today on Trekland Tuesdays Live with me, Dr. Trek Larry Nemechek, coming at you from the heart of Trekland through Portal 47 for the big picture, sanity and clarity in all things Star Trek. Hey, thank you for your patience today. Thank you for joining with us for another Tuesday. And if you are new to us on a Tuesday, then buckle up. Buckle up. I'm going to get off on this tangent, on this rant, or on a soapbox. It doesn't have to be ranty. I don't try to add to the toxicity of the tubes, as you know. Hey, we'll do that, and then I'll take a really quick break. Then I will get to the Parrot Analytics streaming TV ratings. If you're not familiar with those, hang on. And then I will get to the chat full time if you are new with us. The veterans know that I do my thing at first and then I get to the chat. So please don't be offended, Twitchers. Twitchers and YouTubers, though, you are seeing everything in the chat. Facebookers, you're only seeing the Facebook, don't forget. I edit this down for the YouTubers live afterwards. And hey, if you are on YouTube later, try to watch us live sometime on a Tuesday, okay? Yeah. Look, my brain blew up over the weekend because I had competing themes this week. And sometimes when you have an A story and a B story, they both wind up being weak. But this time, last night, it blew my mind. I wanted to talk about 40 years and I wanted to talk about 7 years. And somewhere along the way, I finally did the math and realized that was a perfect Star Trek topic. And why not use them both in the title, wherever you're seeing it? You have 40 years and 7 years, Star Trek. The 40 years, you may guess what I'm talking about. Happy 40th anniversary last week to, Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, or Star Trek, The Vengeance of Khan, as it might have been called if it hadn't been do-si-doing in the same year as The Vengeance of the, what was it? The Vengeance of the Sith, which wound up not being the name anyway. The Empire Strikes Back is what it wound up being. No, it was The Return of the Jedi. The Vengeance of the Jedi, right. This is what I get for trying to cross streams live. The bottom line is it wound up being called The Wrath of Khan so that other people might work on delayed documentaries about insane events like the Khan of Wrath. But no. I mean, there was a lot of pontificating, a lot of nostalgia. Hey, there are movie showings now and coming up. It's going to be a topic all summer long. We can't help but watch the anniversary. Were you there in the theater? Do you have a theater memory moment? Or did you come to the Wrath of Khan somewhere along the 56 years of Star Trek that we're into? Wait, 56? 6 and 4? Okay, 56 or 58 now. Counting the cage in 64. If you can chat about it, and maybe I'll catch it when I re-scoop and rejigger the chat. But it's funny. This anniversary made me sit and think for the first time. I have all kinds of memories about the motion picture and how I didn't get to see it on opening day and I had to wait a day, and how it, unlike Star Wars in my neck of the woods in Oklahoma, it was on its opening day. I remember the original, now, never again, but the original Star Wars, we didn't have it for like another week. My first day to see Star Wars was like June 5th or 6th or something. So I don't have the May, 27th anniversary in my head for the original. And I mean Star Wars. The movie I saw said Star Wars on the screen. No bloody A, B, C, D or reimagined director's edition. I have so much a memory of motion picture. Wrath of Khan, I don't. I don't know if it's because the novels came out a week ahead and yes, reading the novel is where I teared up. Not at Spock dying, but when Kirk says, his was the most human. I teared up at that. And I specifically remember what I was doing. I was laying down on my mom's couch, reading it like this. And that's when it happened. I have lots of memories of the book, though. So the novel, I was prepared for the plot. And you know what? Look, the death of Spock was spoiled forever. We had I've shared this on Portal 47. I may have shared it here. The death, Gene leaked the death because he was vehemently opposed to killing off Spock, even though that's what Leonard wanted to do at the time. And he had leaked it so that fandom would be up in arms, and a lot of people were. And this is pre-internet, kids. This is pre-socials. This is pre-everything. All we had were paper and stamps and newsletters and word of mouth at cons. But that was enough to lead some fans who were in professional marketing to do an actual professionally mandated, a structured marketing survey about how much Star Trek fans opposed to killing off Spock would cost the movie in boycotted box office lost revenue, in lost revenue for action figures and books and albums and the whole bit, magazines, the whole 9 yards of merchandising. And they published it in the New York Times, I want to say, Wall Street Journal, New York Times. It was a big thing, big hit to the publicity. It's just a testament to the movie of how that was all blown away. Nobody 1 week later, nobody had a clue. It became a footnote to history, an awesome footnote, especially as we've gone along. But nobody at the time remembered all that bluster. It was going to be like a third of the box office was going to be harmed by killing off Spock. Of course, the biggest thing was by the time they got to that point, they already knew that it was a mistake. Leonard knew it was a mistake. How do you restructure? How do you do? Well, we have the famous coffin scene, the famous torpedo scene in Golden Gate Park. They had time to film the remember scene with McCoy. So by the time, I had read the novel, yeah, but we already knew. It was just a matter of what was going to happen. And the fact that they were preloading the seeds of the comeback, Nick Meyer adamantly opposed. He thought it destroyed the integrity of the movie. How do you get emotionally involved in the death if it's a cheat? If you already know it's a cheat, if it's sequelitis? He realizes now that it was sci-fi. And it was for the good of the franchise, the good of the character, and it was the smartest thing ever done. Why lose Spock in 1982? Would Star Trek have gone on without him? It certainly wasn't going to be Zahn on the cover of Newsweek in 1986. So, yeah, I have a lot of, but my memories of the actual going to see the movie that night, I know we saw it at the Satellite Twin in Norman, where all the blockbusters were, where you had to go up the stairs to a little upstairs twin theater in a strip mall on the edge of campus at OU that had, the game arcade and some Greek shops and a couple of restaurants. And you would always have your drinks at Mr. Bill's and eat, and then come out and watch the line and go. I have all of that, but that blends into everything that we saw there. All the Star Wars and Indies and Star Treks. Maybe somewhere I have my ticket stub and I need to dig those out, but I can't remember who I actually saw it at opening night, as opposed to motion picture. And then after that, the specialness was it's just blurry for all of them, 3 and 4 and 5. But I remember my takeaways. I didn't like the brassy, militaristic Reagan era uniforms that the maroons, not so much the maroons, which were patterned so they could fit all those bodies as they aged. Blunt truth. But all the bling. I just thought, oh God. And the Admiral on the bridge, I was like, oh God, look who's Gene's lost control of his show. Yeah, the Admiral on the bridge. And the Amazing Grace, I felt exactly the way that now I know Gene did, because we have a memo that someday we'll use in the Trek Files, where he was adamantly opposed to Amazing Grace because it was very non-secular 300 years from now. Of course, that's one of the most poignant moments of the film for a 1982 audience or for a 2022 audience. No, I had a crush on Kirstie Alley in the day. I loved Dee's line as McCoy, "We will." And to find out later on that was his suggestion on stage, just yay, Dee. Everything. It was great to see this Enterprise take hits. It actually had the visual effects budget to be able to be shot and carved up to have all the action sequences that they'd always been cheaped out on. Yeah. And the characters, and I didn't like some of the trite, pawns in the military felt a little on the nose, 1982, all of that. But to find out that Boy Scouts was still a concept 300 years from now. But other than that, I don't know what that Admiral was smoking when he looked at Kirk and said, "You've always stood for order and following the rules." Whose dumbed down mass recordings of Kirk adventures was he watching all those years? But no, the bottom line was what the reviewer said, I believe the New York Times. started off the review, as much as we had all loved and waited and waited and waited and loved and waited and waited and paid tickets and tried to run up the score and box office to at least halfway match Star Wars for the motion picture. The reaction for Wrath of Khan, which started off as a TV movie scale budget, remember, it totally exceeded the sum of its parts, and then convinced Leonard that he was making a mistake by leaving this franchise. But the opening line of that review, now that's more like it. And we were off and running. It feels like the soundtrack from Star Trek IV in the hospital. Kind of the romp music. That's the way it felt as soon as Wrath of Khan opened. And of course, that's the optimism that went into Houston the weekend of the Khan of Wrath, which was averted and saved from disaster. At least a PR disaster far beyond the shores of Houston. And Harv Bennett, for all the yays and nays about him, was the one that stepped in and did that. But as much as the motion picture realigned, turned the battleship of pop culture, so did the Wrath of Khan, each in their own weirdly opposing ways, and set the stage for the trilogy and the comeback on TV by the time of '86 and everything that we know today. So it's weird how it's like when a couple get married and then divorced and one of their kids becomes one of the greatest people the world has ever known. Maybe they had their faults and maybe they had their bumpy ride, but the product they've yielded has kind of been amazing. That's a very weird take that just popped into my head, but that's 40 years. 40 years. And here's the thing. I have no memory of seeing it in the theater, except that I did, obviously. And I remember my initial reaction. So I think I had them in a Facebook post or something this week. So what about you? Those of you who remembered watching it later on, I saw it in my uncle's house on a VHS tape for the, those kind of memories. I envy. And I also remember being disappointed that it was a Klingon in the neutral zone, not a Romulan, because they were near Gamma Hydra. And why would they have a Klingon? And I thought, oh, Klingons are more commercial than Romulans? Oh, boy, was I getting a glimpse of the future then. Oh, Klingons are sexier and more commercial than Romulans are. Okay, fine. And then to find out a whole generation saw that and thought there was a Klingon neutral zone when it was the Organian neutral zone. And that was only on Franz Joseph. And why was there a neutral zone when the Federation and Klingons were open to competing on planets, supposedly on the Organians, but we know that went away. But if they're going to compete for a planet inside the zone, then how can it be close to both sides, a la the Romulan neutral zone was a total trigger wire, like the neutral zone, the demilitarized zone at the Koreas. No one sets foot in it. If they do, alarms go off. That's not the nature of the border along the, it's like a demilitarized. That's why I was so proud that they had the DMZ for Cardassia and the Federation, the demilitarized zone there. Very Vietnam era term, and Korean. But anyway, I remember kind of rolling my head. And then years later, an early case of canon smoothing. I thought, oh, come on, Larry. In what would I thought to be later hashtag texture not trivia, it's a Klingon because that's how rogue they were. That's how bizarre it was. That's why it's such a puzzle for the cadets. It's not according to the script. What is a Klingon doing in the neutral zone? Gamma Hydra, kids. Gamma Hydra. Gamma Hydra is the star in it. It's okay, fine. Of course, then the binary stars. That's four stars, by the way. Binary stars. A binary star is 2, so binary plural would be 4. They got carried away with the whole Gamma Hydra thing as well. And now we have to chalk it up to us. But they insist on having the binary stars down on the hot border, not on the back end border. So we get to say it was a sensor glitch that said 12 light years, maybe not 112, or should have been 112. Yeah. My takeaways from the Wrath of Khan. Obviously, I was focused in on not the big picture. Although, of course, we all love the big picture. All love the big picture. Who doesn't love? He's still alive as long as we have him in our hearts. He's still in our hearts as long as we remember him. I'm butchering the line, but you know what I mean. And of course, the death scene at the door, and you just can't top that. 40 years. 40 years. That was your 40 years. But I started this week wanting to talk about 7 years. 7 years. And it only struck me today that 7 years is a Pon farr cycle, which just adds to my point. I am loving, because I realize our work is never done, I'm loving the reaction of fandom this week to, Amok Time, Amok Spock. Well, fandom reaction to Amok Time, too. Amok Spock. And how many fans are looking at the entire show, the entire series format, especially this episode now, on top of everything. And somewhere the memo didn't flash enough, I guess, that the creators themselves have parsed out that this show takes place in 2259. Not just so it can be about a year after the events of Pike and his experience on the Discovery. Classified. Although it's slowly leaking out. Did you notice? Now the entire Federation Council knows about the Discovery. Is that they know about Discovery going into the future? Do they know about Discovery and its spore drive? I mean, are those linked, or is one cut off from the other? Are the people who are being let in, like April now, are they being told about the spore drive, or just the fact that Discovery was not lost in battle? It zipped into the future to an unknown fate. Lost. Enough to wear your Discovery pin on Remembrance Day. But I see a lot of fans forget that it's 2259, or in a broader sense, that we are 7 years before first season original series. We have 7 years before that time. Now, it's 6 years before Where No Man's Gone Before, which affects a lot of things. And I've talked here about the canon gaps, not gaps, the timeline gaps that we have to fill in a good way. All these characters, especially the legacy characters, and even things like La'an and her run-in with the Gorn, we have 7 years, not to fix things, but to very logically play things out. These characters are not static. They're not frozen so they can... One of the weirdest things of all is the fact that Data had 30 years of existence after the crew of the Trinity. It's a T ship. After the crew that found him, before we see him in 2364 in Farpoint. What did he do for 30 years? I mean, yes, he went through the academy. Okay, chalk up 6 years for that. Academy and some command graduate school. But still, going through the academy, and then 24 years after that, say, rounding, he didn't start on his journey to humanity until he met Picard and Riker and Deanna and Geordi and Worf and Pulaski. Nothing triggered him until then. Okay, that's 30 years. It seems odd now, and most people don't care until you actually stop to think about these things. Someday there'll be a series. Someday we'll have the Stargazer original series, and we'll watch the Stargazer cross paths with somebody will say it for me, that T-ship. And we'll see young Data being very robotic and just unchanging. He'll look like a synth from Picard, a non-abusive one, a non-deranged one. So this is not 30 years. This is 7 years, and 30 years was a crazy mistake to have set his backstory that far ahead. I mean, it was a story need in the moment. I know, but it's 7 years. Lots happens in 7 years, especially apparently with these characters. I was glad to see a lot of people talking about Chapel. This whole thing about Spock and T'Pring and Chapel and Pike and Number One versus Kirk and McCoy. And yeah, it's the deal. This is the living embodiment of Texture Not Trivia. You've got people are upset that Chapel is seeing T'Pring. Okay, Number One. And I did it because I was like, surely not. Surely not. Okay, Number One. I don't mean Una Chin Riley. I mean, point one. The only time anyone on the bridge, on the ship, sees T'Pring in Amok Time is when Spock chooses to reveal her and take the message on the bridge in front of God, Kalis, and everybody. Uhura says, "She's lovely, Mr. Spock. Who is she?" That's her first time to see T'Pring. And then Chapel, who runs on just to give McCoy his med kit to beam down with. Chapel runs on, who's already into her crush, runs on and says, and is standing there when Spock says, "She is, that lieutenant is my wife," or "She, lieutenant, is my wife." That's all he says. There's reaction shots all around, and the next thing we know, Kirk, Spock, and McCoy are beaming down to Vulcan after the commercial break. You see Chapel go at Spock. Now, for 50-something years, we've all interpreted that as everybody being in shock that Spock has a wife, has a significant other of any kind. We can now parse it to say that, okay, Christine knew about T'Pring. She probably knew that they were engaged at one time and that now they've been estranged. Chapel would not go after Spock in 2266 and 67 if she knew anything about that he and T'Pring were actually still connected. And not just connected, but for him to say the W word, the wife. And that's from now on, that's how we interpret that look. Wait, what? When did you get married? You've never mentioned this. You've never said, "No, Miss Chapel, I'm married." What kind of a cad are you, sir? And not to forget, we've got Chapel and her whole Roger Corby odyssey. And this is where 7 years is so much. By the way, Vulcans do not have sex only every 7 years. They have to have sex every 7 years. They are free, as we have seen, to go do the la-la anytime they want to, if they care to. It's just that it's a biological imperative every 7 years, like salmon swimming upstream. But I think we got that settled in the 80s or 90s. People are a little misguided. That's why it was such an issue for Tuvok, stuck in the Delta Quadrant. Chapel has had time to already have feelings for Spock that as a good person she has suppressed, and also as a loosey-goosey, can't have relationships, can't have commitments person. She's just going to feel those flutters and deal with it. But she has 7 years to watch Spock and T'Pring. We have 7 years to enjoy the coming story. And don't you doubt that that's what the coming story is going to be about. And yeah, it will be a tragedy to see this couple starting at the place where they are and already having issues about careers and reconciling things across space. So don't tell me about family ships by the 24th century. Don't tell me about that at all. This is exactly why, only we're seeing it through a Vulcan lens. But we've got 7 years of Star Trek time to tell the story of what happens to them and enjoy it along the way. And we're not in a hurry to get there. We just saw a hysterical episode, low-key droll, and they're back together by the end of it. This is not the beginning of the long road, but you just see the seeds planted. But if Chapel, as some people are opposing or upset about, already has a little flirting, and it's so obvious that, well, her good friend, her good friend can see it, or at least pick up on it, and it bugs her a little bit because it's weird. We know that she's going to be fighting and be torn by that. And at some point, either through a deflection or a reflection, wind up with Roger Corby and be infatuated with him, or be on the rebound with him. And then what? She's back on the Enterprise and rebounding Corby with Spock? By the time of the motion picture, she's glad to see him, but that's all gone. Thank goodness. 11 years is long enough. 11 years of real time, much less 2 or 3 years of Trek time, was enough to dilute Chapel's character on that front. And sad to say, for Majel taking away the Spock crush, yeah, she was the bottom of the totem pole on the call sheet order. And it was so rare that she got to do anything. Now, I see everybody pointing to a obsession, a couple of them. No one brings up she gets ice cream for the kids. But off of Triacus, but no one brings up the Return to Tomorrow scenario, where she is the one that hosts Sargon's body and saves the day at the end by subduing Henoch. Chapel is the one that does that. Now, you might say, well, it's Sargon in Chapel's body, but she's got to be cooperative. To me, that's like the high point of Chapel's daring do. Of course, until the animated series, when she gets to take charge, when she's right there with Uhura saving the ship. All of that, that's there. And people who can't reconcile, they see the Strange New Worlds Chapel is different from, even from Majel's original series Chapel, and even giving the fact of where Chapel was on the call sheet and what they're bound and determined to do with Chapel here. They're not irreconcilable. We just didn't see Chapel in her off hours. We just didn't have that glimpse, that camera feed. Everybody likes her enough. McCoy calls her Christine. They're good enough friends. But that's another thing. McCoy's not just the next doctor after M'Benga. M'Benga is back on the ship he's not CMO. We don't know how many people he treats, if he's only there for Spock or what. You would think that limited space would mean he would do any medical duties he needed to be, but he was there to help McCoy with Spock by the time of the second season, and some of these close calls. And for the fact that apparently the Vulcan database in Starfleet, the medical database especially, is still woefully incomplete. What is up with that? Don't ever rag on Sarek being bizarre, because the entire Vulcan civilization is bizarre that way. I digress. There's something going on with M'Benga and Chapel and McCoy and the whole what's going on in sickbay. I'm also looking forward, as we've said, to seeing what happens to M'Benga. And where does Mark Piper come in 6 years? Is M'Benga doing something with his daughter? Does something else happen that leads him to resign or take a long-term leave? Something's going to happen. And you can bet this gang, Henry Alonzo Myers and Davy Perez, and on down the list. I'm blanking on the rest of the writers, but they're all confirmed Trek fans, original series fans. And you can bet they're not. Akiva Goldsman has already been in a Twitter feed where someone said, hey, what about Roger Corby? And he said, stay tuned. So kids, this ain't 2017. This is the Trek that the world has been waiting for. The 7 years thing, 7 years to play with all of this and the whole nature of T'Pring. Yeah, Pike and Number One know all about T'Pring, but the senior staff, but not Kirk, not McCoy. What happens to Spock and T'Pring that leads him to shut down, that leads them to go their separate ways in all but the paperwork by the time of Amok time? What leads him to decide to shut down his personal life and not share it with Kirk or McCoy or Scotty or Sulu or anybody else who was around later on, who was on the bridge and shocked at T'Pring, including the two he takes down with him? They don't know the backstory, and Spock gets to tell it. And why Spock uses the word wife, maybe that's the simplest thing he can say, because she technically is his wife. They just need a ceremony to make it official. They're still bonded from childhood, maybe slightly different than the Betazoid way. I mean, they're a few sectors apart. Makes sense. Everything he did for his earlier Pike days, he's decided to do the opposite with his later family. His later family, who was shocked that he would hijack the ship to go save Pike in Menagerie. See how this is. And none of this is overnight. None of this is it happens 1 week and then it's forgotten the next. You have 7 years. 7 years for Chapel and T'Pring and Spock and Pike and M'Benga and La'an and the Gorn. We have 7 years for all of this to play out. I'm just saying. So the fact that this week we had 40 years and 7 years, I just thought that was too good to resist. So yes, when you see any Trek fans complaining, distraught, loving the show, but upset about some of the timelines of the characters, the legacy characters, it's okay. It's okay. You have 7 years, Star Trek, and you had 40 good ones too. All right. Got that off my chest. Did I leave anybody out of the cast? You've got 7 years to play with. Oh, Uhura, if you notice, was nowhere near the T'Pring drama. Uhura was stuck in the negotiations room, translating for Pike and Spock. Her time with T'Pring has been kept asunder so far. She can still be surprised on the bridge in Amok Time. Does this mean that the rest of the cast will never see T'Pring live? Will this mean that there's always some convolution to keep Uhura away from T'Pring? Does this mean that our young Mr. Kyle now isn't the same Kyle as the Kyle that's later? Now I want to go back and check who was beaming who in Spock Amok. Or it's none of his business. But then again, Kyle isn't on the bridge to have a reaction of shock in Amok Time. So mission solved on that one. No, I think of all the legacy characters, we're good. We're good. We're good. And the whole thing about George Samuel Sam Kirk, I mean, give it up, people. Kirk says, I'm the only one that called him Sam, which is pretty much true. Pike and he obviously had a react. That's going to be an interesting triangle. And when the Kirk does come in of the second season, twinkle in my eye, it'll be interesting to see what the triangle is. Because this George Samuel Kirk obviously walked up and touched the big egg when he should have known better. At least he didn't pull his glove off and go up and touch it. But he's a risk taker. He is. That must run in the family. Or at least maybe it's, I don't know. We'll see. We'll also see what drove him out of Starfleet. He has 7 years to leave Starfleet and go into civilian service and get married. How old is Peter? Is Peter 10? Is Peter 12? Peter's born by now. You would think, if you're under standard 20th century morality there, that George Samuel Kirk and Aurelin are married and Peter has been born. Or is Peter a year away? He looks older than 7. Don't you think? Craig Hundley looks older than 7. But something happens. Maybe he simply leaves Starfleet to be home and close to his family. Again, that's all yet to come. The naming thing, Chris Pike can call anybody whoever the hell he wants to. And if someone's saying George Samuel Kirk and Kirk's instant reaction, talking to an android, is that only I call him Sam, that's just familial memory muscle. Yeah. It's all good, kids. It's all good. You have 7 years, Star Trek. Okay. Now I think we've covered everybody, and now let's move on with it. Hey, listen, I want to thank everybody for being here. Hang on. We're going to get to the parrots, and we're going to get to your chat in just a second. But I do need to remind everyone going to Vegas, if you haven't thought about it, the day before, Geek Nation Tours and I are doing we've done this several times before, but maybe you're new to it, and there has been a pandemic. The one-day tour out to the Valley of Fire and some other interesting Star Trek-related stuff. You will be shocked, amazed, and surprised. There's a lunch involved. It's an hour away, up to 15 from Vegas. We leave at 7 a.m. because it's friggin' August, and we get back about 2. So you've got plenty of Con Eve nighttime time to recuperate. But we have a great time. This doesn't do it justice with the groups we've taken out to the Killer Bridge, much less Silica Dome here. That's happening, geeknationtours.com, or you can go to my website, larrynemecek.com, and see the link where you can also see the link for the Great Bird Origins Tour in August to close the Gene Roddenberry Centennial Year. Good thing, since we couldn't do it last year as we'd planned. It's 2 days in LA, going to the life locations as a child, as an adult, as a career person for Gene Roddenberry. And Rod joining us for part of that, and some other surprises still to come. I need 6 people minimum. I've got 4. You might think about it, and it's the weekend before Trek Vegas and the Valley of Fire one day. Think about it if you can. Other than that, of course, I want to say a shout out to all of our Patreon folks, our TTL club. I'm talking about Diana Hopkins, Robin Wilson, Lawrence Todd, Anne-Marie Siegel, Keith Rombach, Justin Porteous, Nathaniel Robinson, and Blaze K. And our live wires, Rusty Harold, Halbert Gunn Johnson, Robert McLean, Alan Robinson, Alan Robinson, Alan Owensi, J.R. Poole, Byron Bailey, Dave Gregory, Gay Clevin Yunstrom, and Casey Shafsky. Really, really want to thank you guys. If you're interested in helping out the live stream expand, and we're about to make another push here in just a few weeks, it's $5 and $10. It's simple, it's low key. For a shout out and for access to our older Portal 47 interviews, that's coming. Patreon.com/Trekland Live. Easy, easy peasy, easy peasy. And of course, being a Tuesday, earlier today, the new edition of the Trek Files is out with none other than the writer of the Tholian Web herself. Co-writer, technically, but she was the real writer. Judy Burns. Judy Burns, who is still very much with us here in Southern California and teaching. She was very young when she sold the script. She tells the story and what went into it and what it was like working with Gene. And well, not Gene Kuhn, but Bob Justman and Freddie Freiberger. Someone who has a good word for Fred Freiberger. I know, it's amazing. And if you're not tuned into your season 3 original series, we'll get you there on the Trek Files on Facebook. The documents are there related to her story and sale. Trek Files on hashtag, of course, but podcast.roddenberry.com. So many Roddenberry different podcasts now, besides Trek Files and even Mission Log. You should check it out. Sci-Fi 5 is a daily little 5-minute moment in sci-fi history across all sci-fi, for one, and there's others too. Trek Files, I appreciate all of our Trekophiles out there spelled with an F. Otherwise, you can get me at Larry Nemechek on Twitter, Bang, and everywhere else, including where you're watching right now, Larry Nemechek's Trekland, unless you're on Twitch, and we're changing that soon. Larry Nemechek's Trekland, please like and subscribe us on YouTube. I got into that late, so appreciate all the help you can get us there, getting our numbers up. Other than that, kids, I'm going to take off. If you're leaving us for now, let me just leave you with this. Stay healthy. Do all the things. Just stay smart. This virus hasn't gone away. And we're hoping it's riding down. We're going ahead with life. But that doesn't preclude you from taking some basic smart precautions, okay? Stay woke. Check the sources. Oh, my God, we're heading into election season. Make sure what you're actually reading is correct. And then be open to it if it is. Yeah. As always, I'm saying, trek well, everybody. All righty. We'll get back to the chat, as you know, in just a second. See who all's here. But first, a little Parrot Analytics, where the news continues to be good for Star Trek and for Strange New Worlds, even as it's been a huge week for genre shows, as you all know. Now, the Parrot Analytics, for if we do have some new folks, I'm not connected. I don't shill. I don't get a thing from them, but they're out there. It's a company started in New Zealand, came over here a few years ago. We've been following them now for nearly 5 years because they've tried to measure digital streaming shows in lieu of the vacuum of having no Nielsen's, because the Nielsen's are there to measure numbers, to set ad rates, which is moot, right, with the digitals. Now, they do measure everybody, but they do have a core, their core mission is to do the digitals, apples to apples. And they do that with this metric they call average demand expression, which basically is a very sophisticated way of looking at everything that you can get on the internet. And the posts and the retweets, the buzz, basically. It's a highfalutin tech word for the buzz. Whether it's from studios, whether it's from critics, whether it's mostly from fans, and then all the back and forth out of that. And they measure it against what an average show is across the hundreds and hundreds of series that are out there. This week, Stranger Things is back, blew up. I don't know when the last time they had a number this big, but Stranger Things, as they record it, was at 210 times more popular than the average show. Now, all the Star Treks are in the outstanding category, which is the upper 2.5%, and exceptionals are like 0.4%. Stranger Things is off the charts. Readings are off the scale, Captain. We'll get a bigger scale, I always wanted to say. 210%. Now, The Mandalorian is just behind. People refreshing on that because of Obi-Wan Kenobi. And funny enough, Mandalorian is at 42.8 times more popular than the average show. Obi-Wan premiering now into 2-3 weeks is at 39.2%. These are weekly numbers, and I'm reading the US. Parrot measures all around the world, country by country, and then they do aggregates even for the world. These are US numbers, and they're public at their website under Insights, parrotanalytics.com. Our Flag Means Death is number 4 at 33.8 times. And then Strange New Worlds right behind at 32.7. So they're kind of in this niche of 32.7. They started off a point or two higher with the new weeks, but they pretty much locked in. They're at number 5, and they're at this 32 point, despite all the attention soaked up by Stranger Things and by Obi-Wan. So good on you. The bottom 5 is Clone Wars, The Boys, Love, Death, and Robots, Moon Knight, and Book of Boba Fett, which is getting some residual throw-off, obviously. So yes. Now the overalls, only the top 3 are in the overall. Stranger Things blew everybody away with that. The next highest after that is good old SpongeBob at 71. And then Better Call Saul, which is wrapping up, Saturday Night Live, Game of Thrones, Sesame Street, Breaking Bad, then Mandalorian and Obi-Wan, and then The Simpsons. Simpsons rounding out the top 10 overalls at 38.4. Now, just to see, you can look up the individual number for Star Trek Strange New Worlds. You can see the trends. This week it was at 32.7. Its 30-day trend is at 27.1, which is still it's still in the outstanding on a 30-day. What's wacky is that the demand for it in the last 30 days, its demand is up 203% over 30 days. So its line is doing that. Now its trend line over 60 days is peaking out a little bit at the end, but it's, it peaked at the premiere and it's down a little bit, but we're talking math here. It is still 98.6 times more popular than every other action adventure genre. And just to show that Star Trek ain't going anywhere, Picard, which count the days, is what, 4 weeks out, 5 weeks out of its finale and all the buzz around the finale. Picard's 30-day trend, and of course that's coming and going, it's still at 29.1. Its 30-day trend is still above Strange New Worlds. And its trend line is down, obviously. It's down 7% in the last 30 days. But that shows how high it was and how people are still debating ships and still debating timelines and what the Borg Queen means. And by the way, Terry Matalis came on and said, yes, the Borg Queen's little the Borgati collective that's guarding that wormhole, that vortex, is a subset of the big collective, and that the collective is still nursing its wounds after the damage that Janeway inflicted just a few years prior. Well, 20 years now. So there's that. Picard ain't going anywhere. And actually, everybody who's cooled their heels, Discovery and Lower Decks and Prodigy, they're all not too far off. They're all probably at the bottom of that outstanding upper 2%. They're all still in the upper echelon of what you can see on TV, the way Parrot measures it as buzzworthy. So nobody's going anywhere. Speculation is growing about what's going to take Picard's place when that slot is gone and they need something for that chunk of the yearly calendar. We'll see. But good on Strange New Worlds. I think I want to have it framed the week that Picard and Strange were both in the top 10 together. That was rather amazing. So I am back scrolling now. Let's see what's going on with everybody. Again, thank you for the patience. We had some home family logistical issues that hit right at even our typical delayed show time. So thank you all for being here, as always. Let's see what everybody is up to. Gosh, Tanner, you saw right through me, huh? Okay, yay. If you're new to us, I'll try to give you a shout out. I appreciate actual questions. And we'll see what you weren't a glimmer in your parents' eyes when it came out. I assume you mean Rathacon, not Spockamuck, or even Amok Time. Hi, Dan, and it's good to hear from you, Dan. What's my favorite scene in Wrath of Khan? Now you're going to let me like relay the whole movie in my mind. That's tough. I don't know. I don't know. Am I a commie if I don't say the death scene or the scene on the bridge after where they're all mooning at the view screen and thinking about Spock? Mm. Mm-mm-mm. I don't have one, Dan. Do you have one? Does anybody have? I mean, I know lots of people. It's hard for me sometimes to pick out favorites because I just see so many layers of things, and I have to really go back to my like initial. There's times when it's easy to go back to my initial thoughts, whether I've changed my mind about them or not. But that's a toughie. The con, the con of vengeance would be a different documentary. Yes, exactly. You like, wasn't there like a murder mystery set inside a con? I know there was a CSI episode. That would be the con of vengeance. That's what they should have called that one. That's funny. I don't. I'm thinking The Crawl. I get into this. Some expert's going to be out there that delves in this stream. I mean, the posters didn't. The posters all said Star Wars. Anybody and their dog talking about the movie and the phenomenon, the blow up said Star Wars. Maybe The Crawl at the very top said Episode 4, A New Hope, but you knew that was part of the jingo of the setting of the show. So nobody called it that. We didn't know what was to come, and he didn't know what was to come. I remember reading Lucas in an interview back when I would read interviews for everything, saying he had a trilogy of trilogies in mind, and then within 2 or 3 years saying, "Oh, nope, never said that, never meant that." Let's see. Yes, Wrath of Khan technically had no 2. There are some playing cards that were one of the few licensed things that didn't have the 2 on it. Yeah. Star Wars 4, the one with the whales. Yes, not the one with the Scotland, but the one with the whales. Absolutely. Hello, Rose. Top chat to you. Do 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 do. The most sensational top chat. Do 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 do. Who's inspirational? Hey to everybody. Hey, Steven. Hey, Adam. Hey, David, what are you saying here? The news of new crowdfunding for a 32-inch long, 20-pound die-cast USS Enterprise. Only $600. There you go. And how much are you making on each one, David? Dr. Dave, are you having to branch out and being a model influencer now? No, that's cool. Yes, I did see that, but there you go. Bang. Dan, are you feeling well? Are you sure? Talking about parrot analytics, can you please do your best impression of a parrot, i.e. the bird? Like Beaky? Like Doug Drexler's Beaky? Oh my God. Well, I don't like turning down actual questions. Well, yes, I can't. I'm just laughing too much now. Brock, time to watch the parrot analytics. Brock, let's see what's happening with the average man expression. Brock, look at the trend line. Brock. Okay, happy. Happy now? Hey, Dan. Haven't been able to make it to one of these in a while. Procrastinating cleaning my basement has allowed me to be here today. Well, yay on both counts. Yay for clean basements and one more face here. I'm glad you could make it, though. Yay. Hi, Anne-Marie. Yay. Question, do I know if Wrath of Khan took inspiration from Balance of Terror in the submarine light battle sequences? Well, you know, and if you don't, you should know this. Wrath of Khan brought Harv Bennett to the fold after the financial the train wreck that was motion picture and that stupid deadline to get into the theaters, and the madness and the gray hair and the cost overruns. It was like, throw money at it or else we lose even more money with theaters. And they were bound and determined, Charles Bluhdorn, who had just bought Paramount Pictures from Gulf and Western, or as part of his Gulf and Western Corporation. I can hear Harv Bennett. This is on film, doing his impersonation of Mr. Yeah. Mr. Bennett, can you make a cheaper Star Trek movie than 145 million? And Harv Bennett said, Mr. Bloodhorn, I can make 3 movies for that much. Yeah. But what Harv did, not knowing anything about Star Trek, was he consulted with the fans, and he specifically consulted with Terry Meyer, who was the editor of Interstat, which at the time was the highest level. It was the elite Star Trek letter of comment zine, pre-internet. You had Bijo's book and you had 2 or 3 of the books, but he went to the fans in 1981 when he got this assignment, or 80, and asked for suggestions on fan favorite episodes and what they were. And she answered him. A few people in that circle told him, pointing him to some, but he sat and watched every episode, all 80 episodes, or 79, depending if you count Menagerie as 1 or 2, in numbering, the way the studio didn't. But he watched every episode, and the one thing that popped back up to him was the character of Khan, which famously is why he decided to make it a sequel and go back to that, especially when they could get Ricardo Montalban, all of 15 years later, and he was still up for it. What had to happen, I'm sure, was the influences, and the nautical thing struck him, and it struck Nick Meyer, who also didn't know anything about Star Trek. And the whole hornblower in space struck Nick the same way that had been one of Gene's original impulses, which is when you say Nick Meyer totally came from outside Star Trek, that's a tone that he attached to. Everything from Horner's score to the way they redesigned the Monster Maroons. But Harv Bennett and the writers who threw from 5 story drafts and scripts, and Nick Meyer pulled an uncredited script together because they were running out of time and didn't take the money. And Jack B. Swords winds up with the screen credit. But somewhere in all those drafts and somewhere in that tone, that Harv, and by extension Nick, if they didn't consciously take it from Balance of Terror, it was there, because the submarine. We talk about that with the Memento Mori on Strange New Worlds, how it was that old school submarine feel. I love how they talked about, 40, what is it, down deep below, and Das Boot, and October, and Red October, and people are screaming, going, and you've got your own Balance of Terror. A couple of people I saw talking apparently didn't know Star Trek had its own submarine movie, much less The Wrath of Khan. So yes, I'm saying if he didn't consciously do it, it was there in the zeitgeist, and he picked up on it. Yes, Kirk is a stack of books with legs who follows every rule unless your story needs a maverick. Well, he was a stack of books with legs who followed every rule. I've talked about this before. Did you ever notice how Picard and Kirk's paths were exactly opposite? How did Kirk go from the stack of book with legs to the rewriter, the reprogrammer of the Kobayashi Maru in the Academy? And how did Picard go? Well, we know what happened. Picard go from the raucous guy who took on the Nausicaans in his Domjot game, and then became Mr. Ambassador, Mr. Diplomat, Mr. Let's call a meeting and talk about it. They had very different trajectories, and both became great captains for it. Okay, FedCon. I have not heard the FedCon report, so thank you, Cairo. Not much close contact at FedCon. Ooh. Okay. Well, let's cross fingers for you. You got over back and forth to the States at least once now. So What are you saying here? 57 Pool, is that who I think? Trek Wiki, Memory Nemechek, someone should offer your own degree in pop culture. Well, that's kind of what the made up doctorate is. But I mean, like, those were filmed. I wasn't reading off a script, but I would try to bone up a little bit. Once or twice, I wanted to find the exact moment and the I didn't say anything that wasn't sourced. There was one that I regret maybe a little bit, and they used it, but and I still think that Mark Cushman is over exaggerating the role of humor in what led Gene Coon away from Star Trek. Still go back. Andy Richardson will still say it was just exhaustion by that point, and he was 5-6 years away from dying of lung cancer massively, and he smoked like a chimney, as they used to say. But I wanted to go and research the amount that Gene was offered to buy the franchise in the first throes of being canceled. And then within 9 months, a year, they went, oh my God, we're going to make a ton of money on this in syndication. Offer revoked. And how it was sad that Gene didn't have the money. He couldn't raise the cash in 1969, whatever the amount was, something paltry. It was less than $500,000, 200,000 maybe. And if Gene, that's food for thought. If Gene had been able to buy the franchise then, would we have it today? Would the same motivations work on Gene through the 80s that led to the movie era and then Next Gen? Would it have been Phase 2, which a lot of people debate now would have sunk Star Trek if Phase 2 had been made? Or, we're looking at a partly birthed stillborn baby there, and who knows what it would have grown into. Dan, are you doing okay, Dan? What drink of beverage would I nominate while watching Wrath of Khan? Well, I'd love to have a Diet Coke Splenda and rum if I could get one, but can't. Haha, Glenn, Wrath of Khan blew you away when you saw it in the theaters as a teenager. Mm-hmm. It's amazing how it's still been the high bar for everything Trek's aspired to, especially on the movie side. How to get the villain, how to do the whole dynamic of what the conflict is. Did I call it a mock Spock? I was just testing. That was a trivia. That was deep buried trivia to see if anybody's paying attention. Oh my God! Hi, Carl. Where'd you go? Boom. Where? Come on. There we go. There you are, Carl. Wave back at you. But thanks, Dan. Dan Leckie. Thank you, Dan. The Tripoli. I knew it was a T ship. And why Trinity was coming to mind, I knew it wasn't that, but I couldn't think of the real thing. Even a 3-syllable word. It was the Tripoli that found Data. The question remains, why did he never take off in his developmental journey until 2364? What are we saying? Young Data. Hurry and trademark that title. You like the Big Bang Theory and Young Sheldon, so sue me. Yes, Young Data. Exactly. It would be about the same as Young Sheldon. Somebody at CBS would say, we've seen this before. Data, Sheldon, it's all the same. If it's not COVID, okay, I'll let you on to your local organizing. Speaking of the timeline, Wrath of Khan and Strange New Worlds placed in the timeline are also linked, because the Wrath of Khan was the first canon Trek production that placed TOS, and by extension Strange New Worlds, in the 23rd century. That's basically true. What is the opening title? Wait, doesn't the opening title of the motion picture say in the 23rd century? Now, it was getting honed in because they're making jokes about the... you didn't know if it was accurate or very hot off the vine, but McCoy's line about his Romulan ale bottle being 2283... Now I want to grab the photo book and see if it has the title for this. I think it says in the 23rd century, doesn't it? At the beginning of motion picture. Somebody correct me. I'm doing this live, Ah, okay. Christopher's buried age papers over his inexperience nicely by suggesting he spent quite a lot of time alone in rooms with computers. There you go. You got to do something. It's like more than 2 decades. Wow. Otherwise, Data's kind of a fast learner. There we go. And here's the thing. That explanation. Well, it's one, and nobody goes here. Nobody ever touches this. So here's a case of cannon in a vacuum. It's second tier, but sure, why not? Why not? It sounds like good cannon in a vacuum to me, hashtag. If Vulcans could only mate every 7 years, and then for a very small amount of time, it would be really hard to find even a pond fire time compatible partner. Well, yeah. And just think about is that why their longevity is so long? Because otherwise, if you mate every 7 years, you are not going to repopulate your species. It's going to be hard to do even every 7 years with a 200-year lifespan. Okay, well, we got Dave and Linda back long range together here. Yay. When Spock first said she's my wife, he actually meant that she was his betrothed and it is the one he is to marry. Well, yes. And that's what we've always thought for something years. I'm just saying, Narda, that for Chapel's reaction there, because Chapel now, we know, knew who T'Pring was, but all we're given right there about wife is the fact that, or you could say that Chapel assumed a long time ago Spock had taken care of this. That's another thing. That's another way to look at it. Chapel knew about her, but that was 5-6 years ago. And Chapel herself has only been back on the ship for a year. And in that brief time, nobody has said a word about T'Pring. Spock has never said a word about T'Pring. I mean, it's an early lesson, and just because a Vulcan doesn't talk about it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. And how private Spock is, and how private Vulcans are, yada, yada. So she's been back on the ship for less than a year, and she's made a public display of her affection. So, I mean, it still fits. It still fits. She just would have assumed that Spock long ago, and as she had attentions on him, that he would have said, I'm sorry, Miss Chapel, but I'm still engaged technically. And I feel like honoring that commitment until we finalize the paperwork. None of that apparently ever happened. So it's still a valid reaction. Chapel, in her own way, it's different than McCoy and Kirk's reaction, or Uhura's, or anybody else's. Yeah, Sulu and Chekhov are down there too. Chekhov's like, I just got here. Don't look at me. Chapel has her own unique reaction to that moment. We don't get it from Amok Time. We have no idea. But, and if you think about it, even if you had no idea, Chapel's reaction there is, oh my God, Spock, you never said you had a connection. That's part of her own personal shock line. So that's a through line that survives no matter what we get. What's happened here in the last month? I was just focusing on the fact that he had said my wife, but for Chapel, Spock is an honorable person, and she would have thought he would have said something by now, which is still part. It was Strange New Worlds in our back pocket now. We can still say she would have thought, my God, Spock, I have been back a year. I did chase after Roger and hunt for him, and then with your help found him. And now I've been back a year, and you still didn't say anything about it. I mean, either way it works. It's fine. We just our assumptions we make at the time when we carry them around for 50 years or 20 or 30 or 40. But again, go back to the source material and see what's sliceable and diceable. OG Chapel is your person. Here's the thing. I told this to the crowd at Phoenix on the panel. I love what Jess Bush is doing with Chapel. I don't see any. I've seen fans talk about how, and I think I mentioned this up front, they have a problem reconciling Jess Bush's Chapel with Magel's Chapel. But I think that's like saying, here's the full view of something, and here's of something you were only seeing through a tiny pinhole, and now you get the whole picture. It's the same thing as the philosophy behind those models made for tribulations with all the detail. How are they so detailed? And that's not what we had in the 60s. But it's a case of the camera is right on top of these models versus in 1967, K7, the Enterprise, we were way back here. Now we're up close. Same thing with the D7, even though it wasn't the Klingon battlecruiser, even though it wasn't even in tribbles. This case of we've got a whole new point of view. We've got a much closer proximity perch. Well, you can talk about visual details on a ship hull, or you could talk about a person's entire life. My gut feeling is that Chapel, the character, and Majel, the person, I just think somewhere Majel is looking down and say, go, girl, go, to Jess and what the writer's doing with Chapel. I can just see a twinkle in her eye. I just think somewhere Majel is thinking, well, I wish they'd let me do that, because a lot of what the elements Jess is bringing to Chapel, not off the scale, but a lot of that is the core of Loxana. Now, Loxana's Annie Mame, but the same things, some of those same basic roots that Majel brought to Loxana is, you see, restrained because she's in uniform and in service, even if she's only a civilian attaché and not in Starfleet at this point. But yeah, I think Majel somewhere is smiling over the whole situation with this Chapel and the way Jess Bush is playing her. My 2 cents. The Vulcan civilization is completely secretive. I wonder what the logic is behind that. Oh, I'm sure there's something. Is it reactive to the way the Romulan breakaway, those who marched under the Raptor's wing? Is it something to do with going back to the Civil War and Surak? I don't know. Or something about they didn't promote it well enough so that, they were hijacked with or without Romulan influence that we saw in the Enterprise era, and the true teachings of Surak weren't restored for a few hundred years, apparently. T'Pring is said to be with the El Kashtakti, which is the first I've heard the organization. Did they seem to be more akin to law enforcement or social workers? I missed that, Michael. Knowing Vulcans, I would say both, but I'd lean toward the social worker side of it. You are willing to suppress canon gatekeep with regard to Chaplain in Stranger World because I have a huge crush on her. You and a few million others, Glenn. But as I said, I think it's just like the ship models. We have a much bigger window on Chapel. There's plenty of times, though. There's plenty of times in original series. I've mentioned it. And my biggest one that I see no one talk about is Return to Tomorrow. There are plenty of times when Chapel got to twinkle in her eye. Yes. A survey of singing and respiratory diseases? Come on, Journey to Babel. Moments. All she got were tiny, tiny, tiny moments. You just think all she did was say, yes, doctor. Very true, Cairo. Thank you for shepherding me on this idea. He may have said she's my bonded one, and the universal translator made wife out of that. Or even more obscure, that it made wife and not fiancé. Yeah. Are we glad Strange New Worlds seems to have a new baddie? Well, actually, 2 baddies. Gordon for the U.S. base fans. And I know, Christoph. Hopefully, this is one of those things that a year from now we'll all go about. But right now, it is not adding to the good PR factor. I know. By the way, everybody, so globally, Paramount Plus is hitting Ireland and the UK at least. Still not on continental Europe. But in the UK, it's arriving in a couple of weeks with 3 episodes and 1 a week. So they're going to be 2 or 3 legal weeks behind everybody else through the run of the first season. And then hopefully caught up. And the continent will still be behind legally. And we're all twinkling our eyes at that as well. Glenn, you are impressed they kept the humor very subtle in a situation where they could have gone slapstick. Yes, because is the world ready for slapstick Vulcan comedy? I don't know. It's hard to think about slapstick Star Trek comedy outside of Lower Decks, of course. Love and Chapel, keeping it real. Yep. You're saying they're definitely walking a fine line when it's about fitting into canon, but from what I hear, can't watch it. What they do still works out so far. Yes, and that's what I've been trying to say. Hey, Orlando Geek. So this is how the other half lives? The Twitch side of things? Is that who I think it is? Is that you, Jared? What are you saying, Linda? Except when Chapel did the Stooges slap on Spock's head. Yeah. Actually, I was thinking of NCIS myself, but yes, that's more the back of the head, isn't it? I didn't see that coming. Discovery Season 5 was revealed to have entered production yesterday. Thoughts? What would you like to see in the upcoming season? Some groundedness. Can we ground something? Can we not have the season-long arc be saving the universe again? Although that's what you get into with season-long arcs. Can we have a season-long arc that's just a fun personal mystery, like trying to find what your favorite kind of cake is? Can you imagine the Malcolm Reed mystery cake? Mystery flavor? Can you imagine that strung out over 10 episodes? Ay. At least it wouldn't be saving the galaxy, unless it was. Unless somehow the galaxy depended on knowing your favorite cake flavor. Just groundedness, just breathe and not and laugh. I think everybody has noticed how much people can laugh in Strange New Worlds versus Picard, even, and Discovery. Oh my God, you can just so tell that these first two series were born out of the Game of Thrones era. You can just so tell it. You can just so tell TNG came out of Hill Street Blues, LA Law. Yeah, indeedy. For what it's worth, Craig Hundley was born in 1954, so he was 10 to 12. Thank you, Dan. I was trying to guess. He was tall for his age, but he grew a lot between first and third season when he was on all the and the Children Shall Lead. I think he was a typical or 12s. Yeah. Anyway, so if Peter is born, he was born 6 years before this. So there you go. Where has someone alerted Henry and the rest of the staff to this? Unless Peter is his stepson, and Aurelian had him. I keep wanting to say Aurelian. Aurelian had him and then married or was partnered up with George Samuel. It's playing up pretty okay. Yeah, it'll get there. It's just hard right now, the whole foreign distribution thing. What are you saying, Christoph? They did go a bit far already, bordering ridicule, in your opinion. No spoilers. Well, it was very droll. Okay, Narda, you had a little difficulty tying everything together, but you did finally get the Spock and T'Pring backstory. Viewing it as before Amok Time made sense. I have no doubt you'll grow into the show. Yeah, again, you have 7 years, Narda. You have 7 years. Lots can happen in 7 years. Entire seasons, entire galaxy-spanning wars can happen in 7 seasons. Starships can cross distances of 70,000 light years. Just to put Las Vegas weather in perspective, it's 116 in your backyard right now in full sun, where it's only 130 in the shade. You better believe it. But, Glenn, it's a dry heat. Okay, Cairo, you did advertise the big tour and Trekland tracks again at FedCon. Thank you, Cairo. And I talked to some person from Germany who has been playing with the thought for a while to join Portal 47 and may do that soon. Yay! I can't believe I've had no Germans. I've got you Austrians, and we've got Swiss and our Brits. But it's really thrown me. I blame it on not being at a FedCon or a DST Germany. I can work my wiles. But it really has thrown me that we've had no background canon-loving Germans in Portal 47, backstage lovers. But thank you for evangelizing for me. Yes, Glenn, Fred, the series killer Freiberger. Yes, and Judy has good words to say about Fred. Hey, Michael, speaking from out in left field, what is Morn species? Just curious. He is a Lurian. He is a Lurian, which on screen doesn't come up until late in the series, but I swear to God, I saw something early the first season and prep that said he was a Lurian in a caption. And then it was this mystery thing back in the day. It was a mystery thing for 2 or 3 or 4 years. And then I wasn't even involved with DS9 the first couple of years it was made. But then even by third and fourth season, I was going, okay, what does that come from? I see a caption in a magazine, in an independent magazine. So I knew it didn't just come out of nowhere. That had to be on something somewhere. And I don't know now if there was a cut line or there was a stage description in an action line in a script that was never aired, but that's the kind of thing where it would come from. But eventually, it was confirmed on screen to be Lurian. But that's it. And of course, from half an hour ago, Dan Gunther beats me to it. Boom. Parrot's Needle. Not so sure. There you go. There you go, Michael. Much faster delivery than I would have got it to you than I did. Wait, what? George, Samuel, you just want Janata to do Shatner's Montreal Jewish accent, which he should know being a Montrealer himself. Yeah, but you don't want to sabotage that, do you? No. Yes, it did finally come to air, but I'm telling you, it was in a caption in a magazine. I want to say it was in Mark Altman's first season review that would have been in CFQ, Cine Fantastique, back then. Okay, let's see. Yes, happy birthday. Yeah, happy birthday to Carl. He's an urban legend. Yes, he is. Happy birthday. My favorite of the Kelvin cast, as far as what he did with the character. Although it was a cast full of folks, I still think, much as I love his comedy, I still think our Kelvin Scotty was not the best casting in the world, but I was glad to have him involved. So maybe the movie news today has been deliberately timed to coincide with that. In the overalls. Okay, I'm going to play dumb because I was very distracted in the hour before we went. Wait, what? Have they announced some movie news? I'm going to be like not the person bringing you the hot news here because I've been in a bubble for the last 2 hours, including the hour before I got on. In the overalls, Dickies is in the lead, followed by Carhartt. Yes. No Oshkots? No Oshkosh? Bagosh? Glenn, how could you leave out Oshkosh? Jerry had already confirmed the obvious Borg subset rather than the entire collective. Prime Mattel is admitting it. Jerry is running around spewing background awareness and knowledge? Well, good on her. Good on. Just look at her become that empowered Borg actress. Good for her. Oh, thank you. Parrot needle, now scroll back marker needle. Thank you, Christoph. Okay. Just a question about those ratings. Do they rate older shows like TNG, DS9, etc.? Well, Gay, since they're supposedly looking at everything online, that's a good question. I'm going to, with your indulgence, check it right now. It won't take but a second. Let me see if I can even do this. I'm going to check Deep Space Nine, just because that will be really really obvious. Let me see. U.S. TV audience demand for Star Trek Deep Space Nine. We should do a thing on this. Thank you for this, Galen. You know what? DS9 is sitting at 13.5. That is good enough to be in the outstanding. That is good enough to be in the top 2.7 of all shows. The trend line is down a little bit. DS9 ranks in the 98.5 percentile in drama. This means that DS9 has higher demand than 98.5% of all drama titles in the US. So now I must go and look at, it just will take me longer to write, Star Trek The Next Generation. So DS9 was at 13.7. TNG is at 15.6. New shows would die for these parrot ratings. The demand for TNG went up 0.9 of a point over the last 30 days. I mean, you know, it's a dead show, so you'll get wacky trend lines like that, but there you go. See? Oh, it's more popular than 99% of all other drama shows. And this, kids, is why we have a Star Trek franchise. So don't let anybody talk to you about Star Trek being, and this is measured by internet online activity, which, as anyone under 30 would tell you, is the entire reason for the existence and barometer of anything alive in culture today. If it's not online, who cares? So, boom. This is why we can have nice things if we try really hard. But thank you. I had never thought about that, Gay. Thank you for having me go look. That's interesting. We're talking about Wrath of Khan, I think. Your favorite scene is when Kirk contacts the Enterprise after 2 hours and they answer because they were speaking in code when they said hours would seem like days. Your hubby's favorite Treks are original and Picard. Go figure. He's not a Trekkie, but his choices are cool with me. See? I love having blank slates. I love bouncing things of Star Trek off of people who aren't fans. Because it's a totally, unrehearsed, unwashed, unbaggaged opinion. Okay. Oh, it was originally going to be $3.99, or they went back and checked materials with everything rising right now. That could be as much as just greed factor. Well, I don't assume anything, Christoph. There are no whales in Wales. Hey, don't put it down. Oh, look who just busted in. Are we hello? Boom. Why can't I get this to why can't I get this to thanks so much for the parrot impersonation. It was brilliant. Rock, never mind. Anytime. I am sitting here looking at a bust in from the great. Well, Rico, I can't, you won't click and show up. I'm trying to highlight Rico Anderson, everybody in the house. Larry, I'm trying to highlight this and it won't go for some reason. Everything else still does. I can still do Christoph. I can still do Dan, but I can't click on you, Rico, for some reason. But hi, man. It's good to see you at the thing. What was going on a few days ago? Oh, the showing, the awards. Yeah. You're showing up in the chat, though, obviously. You're in Facebook, so the Facebookers are seeing you. Mr. Anderson. There you go. Who is this, Furious? Hello and welcome, coming over from YouTube. Just saw my reply at Larry Nemechek's Trekland. Oh, what was that? I wonder. Tim, hello, Tim. Are you new with us? But Terry Meyer, such a wonderful lady. And I have tried to get her to come on Trek Files. I've tried to just do a simple interview with her. And she's like, no, I'm old and ancient and no one cares what I have to say, which happens to people of that generation. and they think they're too, and I've had to like pull them back and pull them back. They think they have nothing to say. And then we get them warmed up and we find out Jerry Taylor was that way. Oh, I've said everything there was to say about Voyager. You have it all. They don't get it that we have new people that need to know, that want to hear in the. So I've tried to get Terry to do an interview, even if just an old school sit down and we do an interview, much less be live or recorded. I only got to meet her once in person at a Denver con, at a Starland con. Once we met in person finally, and I have the picture. We don't have a selfie, of course, because who selfied in the 80s, in the 90s, unless you were at some thing. But on the run, nobody selfied. But I'm glad everybody can see Rico. But thank you for being here, Tim. And thanks for knowing Terry and going back to those days. Here we go. Well, thank you, Dan. You've God. I went from 0 to 60, so I'm glad you got to talk to Dan Liu. Bounce the Terra Marathon is very good. Yay, 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 yay. Hey, Andrew. Oh, you miss me. You should start taking off work on Tuesdays just for a couple of hours. Just take a long lunch break. But it's good to see you, man. Hopefully we'll meet up live sometime, or maybe more than we did in the past or something. Hey, Furious, would I consider coming to Germany for DST in September? Well, okay. Of course, it's been there was a time when I was in Germany every year at Galileo 7s, but the last time was FedCon 2016 or 17, I think. Of course, I'd come to DST in September. Let's see. Well, Glenn, when I say phase 2, I'm talking about Zahn instead of Spock, and I'm talking about the late 70s and the state of TV technology. Not what James did with his scripts and all that was great, but I'm talking about what would have happened to the franchise if the next Star Trek we got after the animated series was phase. I've seen a lot of people say that based on the pieces we saw, that a clunky late 70s Space 1999-ish with more budget, but still in the same era of TV, might not have risen above the fold. Now, people are doing that, looking at the scripts and people look at story drafts and first drafts. They don't understand what process goes into honing scripts and who would have eventually been on a full-fledged writer's room. But it's something to ponder. Thank you, Dan. 23rd century was the start of Rathacon. Well, then there you go. I do remember people debating about the timing of motion picture because people were starting to, there was an old, before Mike nailed down the timeline. We did not have the timeline nailed down until Data said the calendar year in Old Earth was 2364 in the neutral zone at the end of first season, because I fell off my chair. First season, Next Generation. I literally fell off my chair and thought, oh my God, they finally done it. And there were some hints. You did have the newspaper. It wasn't really. You had the newspaper in the news rack with the insert close-up in Star Trek 4, but that was the throwback year, and they say 200 years-ish. You saw it kind of coming. You knew it was after 2283 because of the Romulan ale bottle. It was, but was it way after, or was it right on top of? Was it a joke? Was it meant to be fine? What was the point of that? But no. And you'd had fans coming up with different timelines all along. And you had a lot of people, obviously, it's like the 200 years Kirk tells Fellini in Tomorrow's Yesterday, and the 200 years Kirk tells Khan and Space Seed was what people took around with them. And people were this is why the chronology in Spaceflight chronology was set where it was. But fans, the hardcore, back the 8 or 9 or 10 of us, if you had Jeff Mandel's Tech Zine in the 70s, 77, 78, already had, which is in the medical reference, which was in National Official Print, which chronology contradicted, which was stupid because it doesn't line up, because there are more references and things that have to happen than those two dialogue lines that everybody remembers. Nobody remembers about the Valiant when it was launched. Nobody remembers. There are several more subtler things that make them have to be 300 years in the future of the late 1900s, late 20th century. 300 years in the future, not 200 years. And that's it. So what you retcon is say, well, Kirk is not going to tell Khan everything. You have Kirk not going to tell Colonel Christopher everything. Kirk is just rounding off with Colonel Fellini because he doesn't want to give him anything, much less the time of day. So, but thank you, Dan, for correcting me. There are times when I confuse things between Wrath of Khan and Motion Picture. And thank you, both Dans, for the benefits of his dad. Yes, Christoph. I mean, Dirk, what are we coming up on? 8 years since the last one now? Yeah, Dirk owes me. You have to get, no, DST. I was thinking FedCon. FedCon wouldn't be bad next year either. But yes, whatever Showmasters / Media 10, whatever is doing the running right now, you need to have them go tell Mark and Jason to have me come over. Let's put that up there again. Boom. Absolutely. Okay, Narda. There we go. I always love being on the same side of the fence with somebody. It's always much easier that way, even when we don't know it. You can't type Facebook comments anymore, so you open the YouTube chat. Okay, Glenn. I wonder if that's anybody else. I'm catching up quickly. I love how you guys peg it. I mean, I try to, but then I get involved. What are you saying here, Linda? You wish Majel had been given the freedom to do what she's doing with the role. You wish Majel had been given the role, period. That's why I'm saying Majel would have eaten this up. And it would have been the subtler side. We're thinking it's outrageous just because what we're used to thinking of Majel's chapel looking like. But when you compare it to, say, Majel's Waxana, the droll is strong with this one. Same thing with the Vulcans. Nobody's being too over the top. We'll let Una and La'an be the over the top sisters. Mark Alfonso, do I still have some isolinear optical chip props? And have you considered attending DST in Germany in September? Mark, I do have some isolinear optical chips. I have some basic ones. I have some TNG ones that were the plastic with the paper file tab sticker wrapped around with a blue dot sticker on it that they had to use in mass when Mike had to make them for the Naked Now and Shimoda's pile of chips, and they had to just churn them out. And then I have one or two that are nicely etched that are from the set. And then I have another very special isolinear optical chip, which I've told basically almost no one that I'm keeping to myself for the time being. Have I considered attending DST in Germany? Yes. I've been to DST London twice, England twice, UK, but never the DST Germany. I would love to come back. Just start that campaign. Just go deluge them. They're only bringing people over from the canceled UK one. I'm sure there's tons of money left in the budget. Not. But sure, you are authorized. I didn't do this though. You are doing it because of your own volition, as you say right here. I'm not putting anybody up to anything. Let's see. What are we up to? Oh no, Glenn. You need to find those chips. You need to be in the chips. Dan Lucky, you're pleased that Chapel's getting a chance to shine in Strange New Worlds, whereas they had to keep Majel's casting secret from the network during the days of TOS. Well, it was only for the cage. By the time they had her on original series, after the Corby show, and then increasingly in second and third season, and they were putting her in the galley shots for the cast, like on the transporter, the gallery shot, I should say. Because Jean and Eileen were divorced by 67, 68. They were estranged. I was getting into some of this. Right. It was kind of an open, the world was changing, TV was changing, the society was changing. People were busy marching for civil rights and against Vietnam, and people were suddenly not so caring about the producer's girlfriend being in. Yes. Hey, William. So you're going to make it to SoonerCon? We've met before, William, right? But I'm glad you're coming to SoonerCon. Yes. Cake is eternal. Obviously, Cairo. Obviously. And here you go. Exactly. This is the whipsaw. They're going to have 3 episodes out on the 22nd, and they'll be 5 behind the next day, 5 behind the US. You call it Paramount plus or minus. That's good, Glenn. That's good. 57 Pool. You saw Wilson at AwesomeCon. Nice man who likes the growth of his character these days. Yes. Wilson Cruz. Yes. Someday we're going to figure out when he became the ship's counselor. I'll just take that on. But, you know, he's out of the era of McCoy being the ship's counselor. Although there was a ship's psychologist we saw once. Felt like McCoy was doing it unofficially all the time. Disco 5 filming 2 days ago because somebody, probably Ian Alexander or Frakes, mentioned it at FedCon. Might be why Blue Barrio had to cancel. Could be. I didn't really hear about much coming out of FedCon, but that's me. That's not FedCon. Probably lots did. The plus in Paramount Plus is actually a minus, but one fell over, or maybe a thing and a thing. Yeah, right. What are you saying, Dan? You'll do some digging on Lurin and let you know what I find, Larry. Yeah, there were some papers. Well, come on, Dan. I would do the same thing, but I don't have time. Can I just go back to being a kid in the 80s, having all the time in the world to do my concordances again? Can I go back and do that? Can I do that? Simple thing. Yeah. You do love the NCIS. Yeah. Yeah, good rating, good parrots for DS9. Yeah. This is the truth, Glenn. This is the nugget right here. The high demand for older Trek shows proves they're 98% better than all new other TV. We used to say the worst Star Trek is better than 3/4 of the rest of TV. Basically. There we go. What are you saying? Hi, Nadim. Imagine all those masses of fans additionally watching Trek on physical media. Yeah. Now, DS9 went away from Netflix in the US anyway. So now there is officially no Trek anywhere on streaming other than on Paramount Plus. It's still on Heroes and H&I, right? Heroes and Influencers. There you go. The TNG is on Australian TV every afternoon with commercials, right? There may not be whales in Wales, but there is whales in Wales. All righty. I know we had a hugely late start today, gang, and I am so apologetic of it. But again, thank you for your patience. I have oh my goodness, it's 5 till 4. When is my, hold on just a second. I may have to suddenly get out of here. Let me check my, why, yes. Hello, everybody. We had such a late start that I have got to get out. I may have to, fourth Kelvin movie was reconfirmed today. Okay, there we go. Why can I not get this? You know what? Restream is being flaky for me now. Now I can't get that to come up. There we go. So, okay. Audiences want more Kelvin Crew. Well, I think if you ask them, I don't know that people are clamoring with everything else, but fine. You are the Fonz, and you are furious. Oh no, Mark, what did I do? What did I do? I've got to get out of here, gang, in 4 minutes now. Hi, Tim. You met me at one of the Star Trek on cons in KC. Tim, that was in the 80s. That the one in KC was, unless it was the Starfleet con in the early 90s, that was 86, I think. Whoa. We stayed up talking till 2 a.m. in the lobby. Well, of course, 2 Trek fans. Well, wow. You have to get in touch with me and maybe we can, there we go. We don't have a photo from then, do we? Of course. Who took photos? Gang, I'm going to need to get off. And I'm spinning. I am spinning. I lost total track of time. We got started so late. Let's see. Relationship of Riker and Troy is pivotal to the 3rd season of Picard. There you're going. What the fuck am I going on about here, pal? It's called Star Trek. You might check it out sometime. H&I is heroes and icons. Well, so you say. Okay, gang, I'm really going to have to wrap it up. Thank you. That's the sudden end of the chat. Thank you for understanding, everybody. Yes. So once again, thanks to everybody on Patreon. You know where to check it out if you can. It's at patreon.com/Trekland Live. There we go. Simple $5, $10 level. Yay. This is Reverse. The Trek Files every Tuesday. Please check us out. Judy Burns, writer of the Tholian Web. That's there. I'm all over the place. Larry Nemechek on Twitter. Larry Nemechek's Trekland. That's the one. Please like and subscribe us. And if you have a moment and you're headed to Vegas, please run and consider jumping in with us on Con Eve early in the day. You have to get there a day early because we leave at 7 a.m. So it'll be a lot of fun. And of course, the Gene Roddenberry Great Bird Origins Tour. Kids, thank you so much for joining me. Thank you for your patience on a late day today. What can I say? Stay well, do all the things. Stay woke, check your sources. It's going to get muddy out there, especially this year. Election year, primary in a lot of states today. If you haven't voted, California and 6 others, I think, you got time. I have to too. Trek well, everybody.